Clara Bennett's alarm buzzed sharply at 6 in the morning, but she had already been awake for half an hour. The city outside her small apartment was slowly coming alive. Honking taxis, early morning chatter, and the faint smell of roasted coffee drifting in through a cracked window. Inside, the kitchen was cluttered with the aftermath of last night. Half-empty cereal boxes, a crumpled newspaper, and a stack of bills she had avoided looking at until now. Sophie, her 6-year-old daughter, was already tugging at her pajama sleeve, her tiny feet padding across the cold floor. "Mommy, do I have to eat oatmeal again?" she asked, her brown eyes wide, innocent and hopeful. Clara forced a smile, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "I'm afraid so, Pumpkin, but we can add some honey to make it taste better." Sophie frowned but nodded, pouring herself a little from the honey bottle, trying her best to hide her disappointment. Clara's heart twisted. Every morning felt like a balancing act, providing love and comfort while masking the worry gnawing at her. Bills were overdue, her savings were nearly gone, and her shift at the cafe barely covered the rent. She wondered how she had ended up here, juggling work, motherhood, and constant financial stress. After breakfast, Clara sat at the tiny kitchen table, sorting through the bills, the electricity notice, the overdue grocery statement, the rent reminder, all stared back at her like accusatory eyes. She ran her fingers through her hair and took a deep breath. She had to figure something out. For Sophie, she couldn't let her daughter feel the weight of their struggles. "Mommy," Sophie said softly, hopping onto her chair, "I know it's my birthday next week, but it's okay if I don't get the toy I wanted. I just want to spend time with you." Clara's chest tightened and she blinked back tears. Her little girl, only 6, was already learning the lessons of patience and sacrifice she had hoped to shield her from. "Oh, Sophie," Clara whispered, wrapping her arms around her. "You are my little miracle. We'll make your birthday special. I promise. Even if it's not exactly what you imagined." Sophie hugged her back, squeezing tightly, her small voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. "I just want us to be happy, Mommy." Clara held her longer than usual, letting the warmth of the hug remind her of why she kept going day after day. Money could come and go, bills could pile up, but moments like this, moments filled with innocence, love, and trust, were priceless. By mid-morning, Clara had dressed Sophie in her best little outfit, the one she had saved for a special occasion. She tied her daughter's hair in 2 neat braids, tucked a bow on the side, and knelt to look her in the eye. "Are you ready for our adventure today?" Sophie grinned. "Yes. Can we go now?" Clara smiled, masking the knot of worry that had formed in her stomach. Today, they were going to that nice restaurant she had discovered a few weeks ago, a place she had only walked past before, glimmering with chandeliers and the promise of elegance that seemed almost impossible for someone like her. She didn't have much money, but she had a plan. Use what little she had to make Sophie's birthday feel magical. The walk to the restaurant was brisk, with autumn leaves swirling around their feet. Sophie chattered nonstop, pointing at shiny shop windows and asking questions about everything from the taxis to the people in suits rushing past. Clara listened, half smiling, half distracted by the gnawing worry in her mind. What if her last bit of savings wasn't enough? What if something went wrong? When they finally reached the restaurant, Clara paused at the entrance, taking in the warm golden lights, the soft piano music drifting through the door, and the polished floors reflecting the morning sun. It was breathtaking. "Wow, Mommy, it's so pretty," Sophie whispered, her eyes sparkling as if she had stepped into a fairy tale. Clara bent down, smoothing the front of her daughter's dress. "It's beautiful, isn't it? And today it's all ours." She opened the door and stepped inside, determined to push her fears aside. Inside, the restaurant buzzed quietly with soft conversations, clinking cutlery and the occasional laugh. Waiters moved swiftly and gracefully between tables, attending to diners who sipped on cappuccinos and nibbled delicate pastries. Clara guided Sophie to a small table by the window, far from the elegant guests, but close enough to soak in the atmosphere. Sophie's eyes darted around the room, marveling at everything. "Mommy, look at that chandelier. And those flowers. Are they real?" Clara smiled, her heart warming despite the lingering worry. "Yes, sweetheart. Everything here is real, just like our day together. They settled in, and Clara ordered a simple breakfast. Tried to ignore the way the waiter's pen hovered uncertainly over the bill, calculating the total. Her fingers tightened around her napkin as she realized she had barely enough to cover their meal. Panic fluttered in her chest. She took a deep breath, forcing calmness into her voice. "It's okay, Sophie. Let's just enjoy our breakfast, all right?" Sophie nodded, still beaming with excitement. Completely unaware of the tightrope her mother was walking, she pulled out her coloring book and crayons, happily scribbling little flowers and stick figures. Clara watched her, feeling a bittersweet ache in her chest. This little girl deserved the world. Yet here they were, making do with so little. As the food arrived, Clara's mind raced. How could she make today perfect just for Sophie? And in that moment, a quiet determination settled over her. No matter the worry, no matter the struggle, she would make this day memorable. She owed her daughter that much. And somewhere across the room, at table 15, a man watched, noticing the small ways Clara fretted, the careful way she tried to stretch her meager money, and the pure love of her eyes for her daughter. He didn't know her story yet, but he saw the truth behind her struggles. He saw a mother's heart. The crisp morning air still clung to Clara's coat as she walked hand in hand with Sophie, weaving through the bustling city streets. Sidewalks were crowded with office workers clutching coffee cups and commuters hurrying past in a blur of umbrellas and briefcases. But Clara barely noticed the crowd. Her mind was focused on a single goal: giving Sophie a birthday she would never forget, despite the emptiness in her bank account. "Mommy," Sophie said suddenly, tugging at her sleeve, "can we go to that toy store first?" Her eyes sparkled, pointing at a colorful window display filled with dolls and stuffed animals. "Please? Just a look?" Clara froze for a fraction of a second, her stomach twisting. She could see the small, perfectly crafted doll Sophie was staring at, an expensive one she knew they couldn't afford. Swallowing hard, she forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll just look, okay?" Clara froze for a fraction of a second, her stomach twisting. She could see the small, perfectly crafted doll Sophie was staring at, an expensive one she knew they couldn't afford. Swallowing hard, she forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. We'll just look, okay?" Sophie grinned and bounced toward the door, the kind of unrestrained joy that made Clara's chest ache with love and worry all at once. Inside, Sophie wandered the aisles, carefully examining every doll, every miniature tea set, every stuffed puppy. Clara followed, her fingers brushing over the polished shelves, as if the store itself were taunting her. "Mommy, this one is so pretty. It has real hair and it smiles," Sophie exclaimed, holding up the doll, her voice full of wonder. Clara nodded slowly, biting the inside of her cheek. "It's beautiful, darling. But maybe we can pick something else, something smaller, okay?" She tried to keep her tone light, but inside, a pang of guilt gnawed at her. Sophie's smile faltered for a moment. "But I really like this one." Her voice dropped slightly, tinged with disappointment. Yet she didn't push. Clara's heart clenched. She hated seeing her daughter's disappointment, hated feeling so powerless. Clara knelt to Sophie's level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Sophie, I want to get you everything you wish for. I really do. But today I can't. We have to make do with what we have. Just this once. I hope you understand, honey." Sophie's eyes welled up, but instead of crying, she hugged her mother tightly. "It's okay, Mommy. I just want to be with you. That's the best gift ever." Clara's eyes burned with unshed tears. Her little girl, barely 6, was showing more understanding than she thought possible. She hugged Sophie back, holding her as if she could transfer all her worries into a shield made of love. "You're the best gift, Sophie. Always remember that." After a few minutes, Clara gently pried Sophie's fingers from the doll and promised, "We'll go see something else today. Something fun for both of us. I have a surprise planned." Sophie's curiosity returned, the excitement sparkling in her eyes. "A surprise? Really?" Clara nodded, a small, hopeful smile breaking through her worry. "Yes, You'll see. It's something very special. The pair left the store, and Clara steered them toward the restaurant she had been saving up for. Each step brought a mixture of anticipation and dread. She had only enough money to cover a modest meal, and she had no idea if anything unexpected might ruin her plan. What if the bill was higher than she thought? What if something went wrong? Yet, as they approached the restaurant, Clara felt a small flicker of determination. She wasn't going to let fear dictate the day. Sophie deserved happiness, even if it meant sacrificing a little of her own pride. The restaurant loomed before them, golden light spilling from its large windows. Clara inhaled, steeling herself. Today, at least, they would have a moment of joy together. The door chimed as they entered, and the rich aroma of freshly baked bread and brewed coffee enveloped them. Sophie's eyes widened. "Mommy, it's like a palace." Clara chuckled softly, brushing a hand over Sophie's back. "It's beautiful, isn't it? And today it's ours." She guided Sophie to their small table by the window, away from the more elegant guests, but close enough to soak in the beauty around them. As they sat, Clara surveyed the room. Sparkling chandeliers, polished silverware, diners chatting softly in elegant tones. She noticed a faint glint of a man's watch across the room. Table 15, he was seated alone, quietly observing the space. His presence felt commanding but kind, calm yet aware. Clara quickly looked away, uncomfortable with being scrutinized, yet there was something comforting in his watchful gaze. Sophie, oblivious to Clara's anxiety, reached into her backpack and pulled out her coloring book. "Mommy, can I draw while we wait?" Clara smiled, relieved at the simple joy. "Of course, darling." As Sophie busied herself with crayons, Clara's mind wandered to the bills, the rent, the growing mountain of responsibilities. She pushed them aside, reminding herself that today was about Sophie. Nothing else mattered. When the waiter approached to take their order, Clara's nerves spiked. She had calculated her money carefully. But what if there was a mistake? What if they couldn't pay? Her fingers tightened around the napkin she always carried, the one she sometimes scribbled notes on when she needed a reminder to stay calm. Today, though it felt heavier, a symbol of the tightrope she was walking. Sophie looked up innocently. "Mommy, are you okay?" Clara forced a calm smile. "Yes, sweetheart. Just thinking about what fun we'll have today." And for the first time that morning, she allowed herself to truly believe that maybe, just maybe, things could go right. Unbeknownst to Clara, across the room, the man at table 15 noticed her tense hands and the careful way she counted her coins. He didn't know her story, but he could sense the love and dedication behind every small gesture. He would soon see a napkin message that would change the course of the morning, and perhaps, in a small but meaningful way, their lives. The restaurant's glass doors opened with a soft chime, and a warm wave of air washed over Clara and Sophie. The scent of freshly baked bread, brewed coffee, and subtle vanilla notes filled their senses. The soft murmur of conversation mixed with the gentle tinkling of silverware created a rhythm that felt almost musical. Clara's eyes widened, and Sophie's jaw dropped in awe. "Mommy, it's even prettier inside," Sophie whispered, her small hands clutching her mother's sleeve. Clara smiled faintly, feeling both excitement and nervousness. The restaurant was elegant, more than she had ever dared to imagine stepping into. Chandeliers hung from the ceiling like clusters of frozen stars, their crystals catching morning sunlight and scattering tiny rainbows across polished tables. Fresh flowers in delicate vases dotted the room, adding color and life to the otherwise sophisticated ambience. She led Sophie to her modest table near the window, hoping to stay out of the way of the more affluent patrons. Each step felt heavy with anxiety, but she kept her chin lifted. This was Sophie's moment, and she wouldn't let fear spoil it. Sophie skipped ahead, peering around at the tables. "Look, Mommy, that lady has a hat with feathers. And that man, his shoes are shiny like mirrors." Clara chuckled softly, the tension easing just a little. Her daughter's wonder reminded her why these small outings mattered so much. For Sophie, beauty wasn't about money or status. It was about noticing the little things, the magic in everyday life. Clara envied that purity of perspective and silently promised herself she would try to see the world that way too. As they reached their table, A waiter approached with a polite smile. Clara's stomach tightened. She had counted her last bills meticulously, but now, standing here, surrounded by elegance, she wondered if it would be enough. Would they judge her if she couldn't cover the meal? "Good morning," the waiter said, his tone warm but professional. "Table for two?" "Yes, please," Clara replied, forcing her voice to sound confident. "Just a simple breakfast, thank you." The waiter nodded and handed the menus. Clara glanced down, trying not to let her anxiety show. Prices were higher than she expected, and the numbers danced in her mind like a warning. She quickly shifted her focus to Sophie, who was already examining the pictures in the menu with bright eyes. "I want the pancakes with strawberries." Sophie exclaimed, pointing at the picture. Clara smiled, nodding. "That's fine, sweetheart. Pancakes it is." Sophie clapped her hands in delight, and Clara felt her heart lift. For this moment, nothing else mattered. Across the room, at table 15, a man watched quietly. Liam Prescott, though unseen by Clara, noticed the small, careful gestures of a mother trying to shield her child from the harshness of reality. He observed how Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted Sophie's chair, how her eyes scanned the menu with a mixture of hope and trepidation, and the tiny sigh she let out when she realized the total cost. He didn't know her story yet, but there was something undeniable about the love and determination radiating from her. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, but it was real, and it caught his attention. Sophie leaned against her mother, coloring with crayons she had brought along. "Mommy, I like the window seat. We can see everything outside." Clara nodded, watching Sophie's tiny fingers glide across the paper, drawing flowers and stick figures. A wave of relief washed over her. For now, at least, her daughter was happy, and that happiness, simple and unburdened, made her forget the gnawing fear in her stomach. But Clara couldn't ignore it for long. The pancakes hadn't arrived yet, and she counted the money in her purse again. Not enough for extras, maybe even barely enough for the meal. Her hands clenched the napkin she always carried, the one she used for notes, reminders, and sometimes scribbles when she needed to think. Today, it felt heavier than ever. Sophie glanced up at her mother, sensing her tension. "Mommy, you okay?" Clara forced a smile. "Yes, darling. Just thinking about how yummy our breakfast will be." As the waiter returned to place the food on the table, Clara's anxiety peaked. She tried to mask it, but her movements were slightly hurried, her fingers twitching as she adjusted Sophie's chair one more time. It was then that she made a small, almost unconscious decision. If things went wrong, if they didn't have enough to pay, she would write a note. A simple, quiet plea for help, hoping someone might understand without making her feel ashamed. Meanwhile, Liam Prescott at table 15 subtly shifted in his seat. He noticed the tension in Clara's posture, the gentle worry lines creasing her forehead. Something inside him stirred, a silent promise that if she needed help, it would be offered discreetly and without judgment. Sophie's laughter broke through the tension as she spilled a little syrup on her placemat. Clara quickly grabbed a napkin to wipe it, her mind racing. She scribbled a small smiley face on it, more to reassure herself than anyone else, unaware that this simple act was about to draw the attention of someone who could make a real difference in her day. The morning sunlight streamed through the window, casting a golden glow over mother and daughter. It felt magical, fragile, and perfect, exactly what Clara had hoped for. But the true moment of change was still waiting, hidden in the folds of a napkin and in the quiet, watchful eyes of the man at table 15. Clara tried to steady her breathing as the pancakes and scrambled eggs were placed on their table. The aroma was heavenly, sweet strawberries mingling with warm syrup, a golden buttery scent rising from pancakes. Sophie's eyes widened in delight, and she clapped her tiny hands. "Yum. Mommy, look at this. It's perfect." Clara smiled, her heart lifting. For a moment, all worries faded. Her little girl's joy was enough to erase the gnawing fear of unpaid bills and mounting debt. She felt a flicker of hope. But then, as she reached the syrup to drizzle over Sophie's pancakes, Clara realized something. Her wallet, usually tucked in her purse with care, wasn't where it should be. Panic bubbled in her chest. She dug frantically, her fingers trembling as coins and crumpled receipts spilled onto the table. "Oh, no," Clara muttered under her breath. Sophie looked up, sensing the sudden tension. "Mommy? What's wrong?" Clara forced a smile, kneeling to Sophie's level. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just, Mommy forgot something. Don't worry." But worry was impossible to ignore. She quickly realized she didn't have enough cash to cover their breakfast. Her heart sank. How could she explain this to Sophie? She could feel the weight of the restaurant's polished floors, the soft chatter around them, and her own humiliation pressing down on her. For a fleeting moment, she considered running out and leaving the table, but that would terrify Sophie. She couldn't let her daughter see her panicking. She needed a discreet solution. Clara's eyes fell on the small stack of napkins at the edge of the table. An idea formed, hesitant and desperate. If she wrote a small note, someone might notice and help. Quietly, without shame, without anyone needing to make a scene. Her hand shook slightly as she scribbled a single word in large, shaky letters. "Help." She folded the napkin carefully, hoping no one would see it except someone who truly understood. Her heart raced, but she also felt a strange flicker of hope. It was a tiny act, a quiet plea for compassion, and she prayed someone kind would notice. Across the room, Liam Prescott at table 15 sipped his coffee, his attention wandering to the ordinary scenes of life around him. But then his eyes caught a small movement at Clara's table. A mother, tense and careful, with a little girl laughing innocently beside her. Something about the mother's posture, the tightness in her shoulders, the careful way she folded the napkin, made him lean in subtly. He didn't need to see the word written on it to understand. He could sense the desperation, the quiet plea for help, the love woven into every gesture. His own fingers rested on his glass, and he made a decision, quiet and firm. He would act, without drawing attention or embarrassing her. Meanwhile, Clara's pulse thudded in her chest. She glanced around nervously, hoping the waiter would notice her small signal. She couldn't imagine asking aloud for help. Her pride would never allow it. She tucked the napkin under her palm, a silent prayer whisper in her heart. Sophie, unaware of the tension, reached for her fork and beamed at her mother. "This is the best breakfast ever." "Thank you, Mommy." Clara smiled, blinking back tears. "I'm glad you like it, sweetheart." She looked up at the other tables, her gaze falling on the guests laughing and enjoying their meals. She felt small, almost invisible, swallowed by the elegance around her. But she also felt something new, a sense that maybe, just maybe, someone could see her, understand her, and help. At that moment, Liam made a subtle gesture, a slight nod to the waiter, discreet enough that only the waiter could notice. No words were exchanged, no glances from others were drawn. Just quiet, efficient action, rooted in empathy. The waiter approached Clara's table moments later, a warm smile on his face. "Excuse me, ma'am. Please don't worry about anything. Consider your breakfast taken care of." Clara froze, staring at him in disbelief. I don't understand." "You." The waiter shook his head gently. "No explanation needed. Just enjoy your meal." Her eyes welled with tears. Sophie looked up at her mother, sensing the emotion in her eyes. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Clara reached over and hugged her tightly. "Because someone just reminded me that there are kind people in the world, Sophie. People who help without expecting anything in return." Sophie's eyes widened and she hugged back, giggling through the moment. "Wow, that's amazing, Mommy." Across the room, Liam Prescott watched quietly, a soft smile on his face. No words were exchanged, no acknowledgement made. The act itself, small and unseen by the world, had brought relief, joy, and hope to a mother and child. That was enough. Clara held Sophie close, her heart swelling with gratitude and awe. The napkin, once a symbol of desperation, had become a quiet testament to human kindness. And in that simple, fleeting moment, Clara realized something profound. Even in the hardest times, hope could find a way through small, unexpected gestures. Sophie giggled again, pointing at the pancakes. "Mommy, look, can I have extra strawberries?" Clara laughed through her tears, feeling the weight lift from her shoulders. "Of course, darling. Go ahead." The The rest of the breakfast passed in a blur of laughter, syrupy pancakes, and the warm, simple joy of being together. Clara's heart was lighter than it had been in months. She had felt despair, but now she felt seen, understood, and most importantly, her daughter's happiness had not been compromised. And somewhere across the restaurant, the quiet observer at table 15 allowed himself a small, satisfied nod. A single unnoticed act of kindness had changed the morning, and perhaps even rekindled a mother's faith in humanity. Clara's fingers shook slightly as she lifted her fork, taking a small bite of her scrambled eggs. The rich, buttery taste felt like a luxury she hadn't savored in months. Beside her, Sophie was happily devouring her pancakes, a smear of syrup on her cheek, giggling with delight. Clara's chest tightened with relief. This, she realized, was the kind of day she had hoped to give her daughter. The quiet miracle that had just occurred, the waiter covering their breakfast, had transformed the tension in Clara's chest into a warm, gentle glow. She still didn't know who had orchestrated it, but she didn't need to. Someone had noticed her silent plea and acted without judgment, without fanfare. The simple act of kindness was enough to restore her faith in the world. Sophie leaned over the table, eyes wide and sparkling. "Mommy, do you know what? I think today is the best birthday ever." Clara smiled, her eyes glistening. "I think it might just be, sweetheart." She looked across the room, subtly catching a glimpse of the man at table 15. He was watching them with a quiet attentiveness, a small smile tugging at his lips. There was no pomp, no need for recognition, just a gentle satisfaction of having help without asking for anything in return. Clara didn't know his name, and she wasn't sure she ever would. But in that moment, his presence became a symbol of hope. As they ate, Clara found herself relaxing in a way she hadn't in months. The crisp air of anxiety that had been clinging to her like a shadow seemed to lift slightly, replaced by gratitude. Sophie's laughter rang out with every bite, and Clara couldn't help but mirror it, her smile breaking into something real, unguarded, and joyous. At one point, Sophie's fork wobbled in her hand, and a dollop of syrup slipped onto the tablecloth. Clara reached for a napkin, laughing softly. "Careful, sweetheart," she said, dabbing the mess. "You don't want to waste any of that syrup." Sophie giggled, brushing her fingers against her mother's. "Mommy, thank you for today. I know it's been hard, but this is perfect." Clara's throat tightened. "You deserve perfect, Sophie. You always do." The warmth of Sophie's hug lingered longer than usual, a reminder that joy could flourish even amidst hardship. And while Clara had once believed that small pleasures, like a simple breakfast in a fancy restaurant, were luxuries she couldn't afford, she now realized that sometimes magic came from the kindness of strangers and the love they already had. Across the room, Liam Prescott quietly observed the small family. He noted the relief washing over Clara, the light in Sophie's eyes, the way a simple gesture could ripple outward and transform an ordinary morning. It was a reminder that true wealth wasn't counted in money or possessions. It was measured in the ability to see, understand, and act with empathy. As the breakfast continued, the waiter occasionally refilled Sophie's glass with juice, placing an extra dollop of whipped cream on her pancakes, small touches that made the morning feel even more special. Clara noticed these little extras, but chose not to question them. She understood now that sometimes generosity didn't need to be explained. It simply existed. Sophie leaned back in her chair, syrup smeared across her lips, a satisfied sigh escaping her. "Mommy, can I tell you something?" Clara raised an eyebrow. "Of course, darling. What is it?" Sophie smiled mischievously. "I think someone's magic is helping us today. I don't know who, but I can feel it." Clara laughed through her tears, hugging her daughter close. "Maybe you're right, sweetheart. Maybe you're right." For the first time in a long while, Clara let herself breathe fully. The weight of her worries, rent, bills, work stress, hadn't disappeared, but the act of kindness had shifted something inside her. She felt lighter, seen, and renewed. She realized that while life might continue to be challenging, there were still moments of hope, still opportunities for joy, still reasons to smile. The morning passed in a blur of syrupy pancakes, laughter, and the soft hum of conversation. Clara marveled at how simple gestures, Someone noticing a quiet plea, a napkin with single word, could transform despair into relief. Sophie's happiness radiated to the small table, filling Clara's heart with gratitude beyond measure. And as they prepared to leave, Clara felt a profound sense of appreciation for the invisible kindness that had guided their morning. She glanced once more toward table 15, catching a fleeting glimpse of the man whose quiet observance had made all the difference. He gave a small nod, barely noticeable, and then returned to his coffee, leaving the family to their joy. Clara held Sophie's hand tightly as they exited the restaurant, warmth and hope mingling with the crisp city air. "Thank you for trusting me today, Sophie," she said softly. "I promise, no matter what, we'll always find a way to make special moments together." Sophie's eyes shone. "I always do, Mommy. Always." And with that, Clara knew that the day's magic wasn't just in the breakfast or the small act of kindness, or even in the elegant restaurant. It was in the bond she shared with her daughter, and the quiet reminder that love, empathy, and hope could change even the hardest of mornings into something unforgettable. The soft morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows, scattering golden light across the polished restaurant tables. Clara and Sophie had finished their breakfast, leaving behind empty plates and sticky fingers, but neither wanted to leave the comforting warmth of the space just yet. Sophie leaned back in her chair, eyes scanning the room. "Mommy, look at those flowers again. They're so pretty." Clara smiled, letting her gaze wander to the delicate vases dotted across the tables. "They are beautiful, aren't they?" she said softly. She watched as Sophie reached over to gently touch a single petal, marveling at the texture and scent. "You have such an eye for beauty, Sophie," Clara added, her voice filled with quiet admiration. Sophie grinned. "I like noticing things, Mommy. Everything has its little magic." Clara's chest tightened. She wanted her daughter to always see the magic, even when life seemed hard. Even when bills piled up or the next paycheck felt out of reach, there was beauty in small moments, and today, she realized, they were surrounded by it. Across the restaurant, Liam Prescott at table 15 continued to observe discreetly, noticing the way Clara's hand occasionally brushed against Sophie's, guiding her, steadying her. He saw a mother's love in its purest form. He didn't intervene this time. His earlier act of kindness had already set the day in motion. Now, he simply watched, appreciating the bond between the two without intruding. Back at their table, Sophie noticed a waiter quietly arranging the napkins and silverware. She pointed with excitement. "Mommy, he's being so careful with everything. That's magic too, right?" Clara laughed softly. "Yes, darling. Sometimes magic is just people being thoughtful, noticing little things, and caring enough to do them well." Sophie's eyes lit up. "I want to be like that when I grow up. I want to notice everything and make people happy." Clara felt her heart swell. In her daughter's simple statement was a profound truth. Kindness could ripple outward, changing lives in ways no one could fully measure. She reached across the table and squeezed Sophie's hand. "You already are like that, Sophie. You already make people happy just by being you." Sophie beamed and resumed her coloring, the crayons now leaving vibrant streaks across the page. Clara leaned back in her chair for a moment, letting the serenity of the scene wash over her. The anxiety of earlier, lost wallet, unpaid bills, the fear of being unable to provide, had melted into gratitude. Today, small gestures had become a lifeline, a quiet proof that the world was not devoid of kindness. Clara noticed Liam glance subtly in their direction once more. Their eyes briefly met, and she felt an almost unexplainable warmth, a sense that someone out there understood, saw her struggle, and responded with compassion. It wasn't the kind of attention she usually sought or expected. It was quiet, respectful, and human. Sophie's curiosity pulled Clara back to her daughter. "Mommy, can I draw him a picture?" she asked, pointing toward the man at table 15. Clara hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, you can, but let's keep it small and sweet, okay? Just a little thank you in your own way." Sophie scribbled quickly, the strokes of her crayon imperfect but full of genuine warmth. She drew a heart and two stick figures holding hands, smiling broadly. "There, that's magic, Mommy. That's for him." Clara smiled, touched by her daughter's innocent generosity. "It is magic, Sophie. Thank you for noticing it." The morning continued gently, with quiet laughter, shared smiles, and small, meaningful interactions. Clara found herself noticing the waiter's subtle attentiveness, the delicate arrangement of the table, and Sophie's endless curiosity. Each gesture, however tiny, seemed to reinforce a lesson she had almost forgotten, that love and kindness existed everywhere, often in unnoticed forms. Sophie paused her coloring, looking at her mother with wide, serious eyes. "Mommy, can we always find people like him? People who help without asking for anything?" Clara nodded slowly. "Yes, sweetheart. They are out there. And sometimes we get to be them too. Today, you've already done that just by noticing and being kind." Sophie grinned, hugging her mother tightly. "I want to be kind like you, Mommy." Clara held her close, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "And you are, Sophie. You already are." As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Clara felt a renewed sense of hope. Today had started with worry and desperation, yet it had turned into a morning filled with warmth, love, and quiet joy. The small gestures, someone noticing a napkin, the careful service of staff, Sophie's laughter and drawing, had transformed the day entirely. Walking toward the door, Clara looked back once more at table 15. Liam Prescott had left, his seat empty, leaving only a subtle sense of calm and reassurance. He had quietly made a difference without seeking recognition. Clara realized then that life's magic wasn't about grand gestures. It was in moments like these, where empathy and love touch hearts in ways both seen and unseen. Outside, the city hummed with activity, but Clara and Sophie felt a bubble of warmth around them. Hand in hand, they stepped into the crisp morning air, their laughter blending with the sounds of the streets. Clara's worries hadn't vanished, but they had been softened by hope. She knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger, kinder, and with the understanding that even small acts of compassion could change lives. Sophie skipped ahead, humming a little tune, and Clara followed her heart light. She silently thanked the stranger, the waiter, and the universe for the quiet magic of the morning. And she promised herself that she would carry this lesson forward, nurturing it in her daughter and in herself. The city streets were brighter now, painted with soft autumn sunlight that reflected off wet pavement and golden leaves drifting lazily in the wind. Clara and Sophie walked hand in hand, the warmth of the morning lingering between them, a quiet cocoon of joy after the small miracle they had experienced at the restaurant. Sophie skipped along, her energy boundless. "Mommy, can we go to the park before we go home? Please? I want to play with the leaves." Clara smiled, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's enjoy the day while we can." She felt lighter than she had in months. The anxiety that clung to her chest like a heavy stone had loosened, replaced by a quiet, enduring hope. As they walked, Clara thought about the morning, the tiny act of kindness that had changed everything. It wasn't just a breakfast being paid for. It was a validation, the reminder that the world still had moments of generosity and understanding. She glanced down at Sophie, laughing and twirling in the breeze, and realized that these were the true treasures in life: love, attention, and the joy of seeing someone else smile. Sophie paused, picking up a particularly bright leaf and showing it to her mother. "Look, Mommy, it's like it's glowing. Do you think it's magic?" Clara crouched to her daughter's level, examining the leaf. "It is, in a way, not the kind you see in stories, but the kind you feel. Magic can be moments like this, when something small makes your heart happy, when someone notices you, or when you notice someone else." Sophie's eyes widened. "Like the man at the restaurant?" Clara nodded, smiling softly. "Exactly, sweetheart. He saw us and helped without asking for anything in return. That's magic, too. People like that make the world better, one small action at a time." Sophie thought about this for a moment, her small brow furrowing in concentration. Then she smiled, a light of determination in her eyes. "Mommy, I want to do that too. I want to notice people and make them happy." Clara felt her heart swell. "You already are, Sophie. Every time you share your laughter, your drawings, or even just your smile, you're spreading kindness. That's what matters most." They reached the park, and Sophie immediately ran to a pile of fallen leaves, scattering them into the air with glee. Clara watched her daughter's joy, remembering the moments of her own childhood when she played among the trees with a carefree heart. Life had grown heavier since then, but seeing Sophie reminded her that happiness didn't need to be complicated. It was found in laughter, in small gestures, in noticing the beauty around you. Clara sat on a bench, letting Sophie play while she reflected on the morning's events. She thought about the waiter's discreet assistance, the quiet man at table 15 who had seen her silent plea, and Sophie's own small acts of joy and curiosity. The world had shown her that kindness often went unnoticed, yet had the power to transform despair into hope. Sophie ran back, holding a leaf in her hand. "Mommy, look, this one is the brightest." Clara took it, examining its rich amber color. "It really is beautiful," she said. "And it reminds me that even small things like this leaf or a tiny act of kindness can make a big difference. Sometimes we just have to notice them." Sophie nodded, holding the leaf carefully. "I will, Mommy. I promise." They sat together for a few minutes, sharing quiet smiles, letting the wind carry laughter and rustling leaves around them. Clara realized that these were the lessons she wanted to pass on, that hope existed even in hard times, that compassion could change someone's day, and that joy was often found in simple moments. "Mommy," Sophie said softly, sitting beside her, "I think today is a day I'll never forget. You and me and magic people, too." Clara hugged her daughter tightly, feeling the warmth of the sun on her face and the unspoken lesson in Sophie's words. "Neither will I, darling. Neither will I." As they prepared to leave the park, Clara made a small detour. She stopped at a local bakery she had passed a few times before, remembering the half-smile from the owner when she had peeked in. Today, with her daughter's laughter still echoing in her ears, she decided to treat Sophie to a small birthday pastry. Sophie's eyes lit up as they entered the shop. "Mommy, can I pick one?" Clara nodded. "Of course, sweetheart. Pick the one you like most." Sophie carefully selected a cupcake with bright frosting and tiny sprinkles, holding it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Clara paid for it, her heart swelling, not just because she could afford it, but because she could see Sophie's happiness light up the morning. Walking back toward their apartment, Clara reflected on the day. The morning had begun with worry and uncertainty, but had transformed into a series of small miracles. She realized that life's challenges were inevitable, but so were the opportunities to find hope, to notice kindness, and to share joy with others. Sophie skipped ahead, clutching her cupcake, and Clara followed, a quiet smile on her face. She knew that today's lessons, the value of noticing, of appreciating small acts, of spreading kindness, would stay with them both for a long time, and she felt, for the first time in months, a profound sense of peace. Sometimes, she thought, the simplest lessons were the most important. The apartment door clicked softly behind them, and Clara felt a wave of quiet relief wash over her. The familiar scent of home, warm laundry, faint hints of cleaning soap, and the lingering smell of Sophie's crayons, wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. Sophie immediately kicked off her shoes and ran toward the living room, cupcake in hand, her laughter bouncing off the walls. "Mommy, can we sit on the floor and have a little picnic?" "Just us." Clara smiled, the tension of the past weeks melting further. "Of course, sweetheart. Let's make it special." They spread a small blanket across the living room floor, creating their own tiny world of celebration. Sophie carefully placed her cupcake in the center, her tiny fingers patting it down as if arranging a delicate treasure. Clara poured a glass of juice and sat cross-legged beside her daughter. "Mommy," Sophie said between bites, "today was perfect. I mean, really perfect. I think magic people are everywhere, aren't they?" Clara nodded, her eyes glistening. "Yes, darling, they're everywhere. And sometimes we get to be the magic people, too." Sophie's face brightened. "I want to be magic like them, like the man at the restaurant or the waiter, or even you, Mommy." Clara chuckled softly. "I try, Sophie, but you're already magic. Every smile you give, every kind thing you do, it changes people's days." Sophie beamed, and for a moment, Clara felt as though the weight of the world had lifted. In that small, cozy apartment, surrounded by simple comforts, she realized that happiness wasn't about money, grand gestures, or perfect circumstances. It was about noticing, appreciating, and spreading small moments of joy and love. After their picnic, they moved to the couch. Sophie cuddled under a blanket, while Clara tidied up the few crumbs that had fallen. She paused, looking around at their modest home, thinking about the morning, the restaurant, the napkin, the quiet kindness of strangers, and her daughter's unbroken spirit. Clara realized that today had taught her more than any lesson she could have planned. She had learned that hope could appear in unexpected ways, that people could act with generosity without expecting recognition, and that a child's joy could illuminate even the darkest of days. Sophie's small voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Mommy, can we make thank you cards for magic people tomorrow? Just in case we see them again." Clara smiled, kneeling beside her daughter. "That's a wonderful idea, Sophie. And even if we don't see them again, it's still a good way to remember how kindness makes a difference." Sophie hugged her tightly. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you too, Sophie." "More than anything," Clara whispered, holding her daughter close. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow through their windows, Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had faced hardship, anxiety, and the crushing weight of responsibility, but she had also witnessed something beautiful: the quiet power of compassion and the unbreakable bond she shared with her daughter. Sophie eventually drifted into a light nap, her cupcake remnants safely tucked away, and Clara sat beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. She thought about the napkin and the simple words she had written that morning: help. What had begun as a desperate plea had turned into a lesson in humility, trust, and human goodness. Clara whispered softly, almost to herself, "Thank you to whoever you are. Today would not have been the same without your kindness." For the first time in months, she allowed herself to truly relax. She knew that life would continue to challenge her, that bills would need paying, that responsibilities would weigh heavy, but she also knew that moments like today existed. Moments where love, empathy, and attention could transform fear into hope, tears into laughter, and uncertainty into gratitude. She glanced at Sophie, sleeping peacefully, and felt a profound sense of purpose. No matter how difficult life became, she would continue to teach her daughter the values she had witnessed, noticing the needs of others, acting with kindness, and cherishing the small wonders of life. Even the smallest gestures, she realized, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways one could never fully measure. Today's breakfast, a napkin, a smile, these were more than simple acts. They were lessons, reminders, and threads of hope woven into the fabric of a challenging life. Clara gently adjusted Sophie on the blanket and whispered, "Sleep well, my love. And always remember, kindness is magic, and you are magic too." As the sunlight faded and evening settled over the apartment, Clara sat quietly, reflecting on the day. She felt lighter, her heart full, and a renewed faith in the goodness of people. She understood now that life's true treasures were not material wealth, but the love she shared with her daughter, the generosity of strangers, and the small, magical moments that made life meaningful. And in that quiet evening, with Sophie softly breathing beside her, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in months. The day had begun with worry, desperation, and uncertainty, but it had ended in warmth, gratitude, and hope. Sometimes, she thought, all it took was a little faith, a small act of courage, and the courage to notice the magic in the world around you. And sometimes, that was enough to change everything. Clara watched Sophie sleep, her tiny chest rising and falling, a quiet reminder of the pure joy she fought so hard to protect. Today had begun with worry, desperation, and uncertainty, but ended with laughter, gratitude, and hope. A simple word on a napkin had sparked a chain of unseen kindness, proving that even the smallest acts could change lives. Clara knew that while challenges would always come, the warmth of love, empathy, and shared moments with her daughter would guide them through. Sometimes, all it took was noticing the magic around you, and remembering that you, too, could be the magic in someone else's day.